In a picturesque small town surrounded by rolling hills and lush greenery, Isabella Brooks, a fiercely independent and beautiful young woman, found herself standing in the middle of an ornate, candlelit chapel. It was the day of her wedding, yet her heart was not racing with excitement, nor was she giddy with anticipation. Instead, she was nervous, unsure of the unknown. Isabella's grandmother, who had always been her guiding light, believed in the old ways, where marriages were not based solely on love at first sight, but on destiny and deeper connections. She had orchestrated this marriage, convinced that Isabella and her soon-to-be husband were fated to be together. Despite her reservations, Isabella trusted her grandmother's wisdom and agreed to this unconventional arrangement. On the other side of the aisle, Jared Wright stood tall and composed, though his mind was swirling with uncertainty. He was a man who had it all: wealth, power, and influence. Yet he felt an emptiness that all his success couldn't fill. His grandmother, who had raised him with traditional values, was the mastermind behind this marriage. She believed that Jared needed a partner who would love him for who he was, not for his money or status. And so, she had arranged this blindfolded wedding, certain that destiny would bring two kindred spirits together. As the ceremony began, both Isabella and Jared were blindfolded, their senses heightened as they listened to the officiant's words. Neither could see the other, but they could feel the significance of the moment. As they exchanged vows, their voices steady yet laced with emotion, they were united not by sight, but by the unseen bond their grandmothers believed in so strongly. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, there was no kiss to seal their union, only a gentle touch of hands as a symbolic gesture of their new life together. The ceremony concluded, and just as quickly as it began, they were separated, whisked away in different directions without ever laying eyes on one another. As Isabella returned home, she couldn't shake the surreal feeling of being married to a man she had never seen. Jared, too, was left pondering the identity of the woman who was now his wife. But life had to go on, and both returned to their daily routines, silently wondering when and if they would ever cross paths again. 3 years passed since that fateful day, and Isabella had established herself as a competent and reliable secretary in a prestigious company. She worked for Mr. Wright, a charismatic yet mysterious man who was well respected in the business world. Little did Isabella know, Mr. Wright was actually Jared Wright, her husband. He was living a double life. By day, he was Mr. Wright, the approachable boss, and by night, he was Jared Wright, a billionaire with a sprawling empire. Jared had embraced his dual identity to escape the pressures of his wealth. As Mr. Wright, he could interact with people on a more genuine level, free from the expectations that came with being Jared Wright. Despite his wealth, Jared found solace in his simple, almost anonymous life as Mr. Wright. It allowed him to see the world from a different perspective, and it was in this world that he had come to admire his secretary, Isabella. Isabella, meanwhile, had no idea that her boss was her husband. She had long since accepted that she might never meet her mysterious spouse and had focused on building her career. She respected Mr. Wright for his fairness and kindness as a boss, even though she knew little about his personal life. Their relationship was professional, but Isabella couldn't deny a growing admiration for him, not knowing that it was the man she had married 3 years ago. Jared, feeling that it was time to finally meet his wife properly, decided to make a grand gesture. He purchased a bouquet of her favorite flowers and a stunning diamond ring, intending to give her the life she deserved. With his grandmother's help, he tracked down an address, believing it to be where his wife lived. When Jared arrived at the house, he was filled with a mix of nerves and excitement. A woman answered the door, and in his eagerness, Jared mistook her for Isabella. This woman was actually Isabella's close friend, who happened to be staying with her at the time. Jared, oblivious to the mistake, handed her the flowers and ring, thanking her for her patience and expressing his desire to finally be together. The friend, confused but intrigued, accepted the gifts and later relayed the strange encounter to Isabella, who was puzzled by the story. She dismissed it as a misunderstanding, never imagining that the man was her husband. Trying to reconnect, Jared left the house, feeling satisfied that he had made amends, though something still felt off. Meanwhile, Isabella couldn't shake the strange feeling that the universe was playing a trick on her. Jared's confusion soon turned into suspicion. He began to doubt whether his wife was truly faithful to him. The mix-up at the house left him with the impression that his wife had moved on and was possibly involved with another man. Hurt and feeling betrayed by a woman he had never even seen, Jared decided to take the drastic step of filing for divorce. When the divorce papers arrived at Isabella's doorstep, she was shocked. The papers were a stark reminder of a marriage that felt more like a dream than reality. Nevertheless, she signed them, thinking it was the best way to move on from a life that had been on hold for too long. Jared, believing he was doing the right thing, prepared for the final hearing. He was ready to put the past behind him and focus on the future, still unaware that the woman he was about to divorce was the same one he saw every day at work. Isabella, too, prepared herself for the hearing, feeling a mix of sadness and relief that this chapter of her life was finally coming to an end. The day of the court hearing arrived, and both Jared and Isabella made their way to the courthouse. Jared arrived early, eager to conclude the matter and move on. As he stood outside, he noticed a familiar figure waiting by the entrance. It was Isabella, her expression a mix of resolve and sadness. Jared's heart skipped a beat as recognition dawned on him. He couldn't believe his eyes. Isabella, his secretary, was the woman he had married 3 years ago. The reality of the situation hit him like a ton of bricks. How could he have been so blind? How could he have not recognized her all this time? Panicking, Jared turned to his lawyer, who confirmed his worst fear. Isabella Brooks, his wife, was indeed the woman standing outside the courthouse. In that moment, Jared felt a deep sense of regret and guilt. He had been ready to divorce the woman he had grown to care for deeply, all because of a misunderstanding. Determined to fix his mistake, Jared rushed to cancel the divorce, desperate to make things right. But when he approached Isabella, she was too upset to listen. She couldn't believe that the man she had been married to for 3 years had been her boss all along, and that he had doubted her so easily. As she stormed out of the courthouse, Jared followed her, begging her to stop and listen. But Isabella was too hurt and confused. She couldn't reconcile the man she had respected and admired with the one who had doubted her fidelity and filed for divorce. Jared watched helplessly as Isabella walked away, vowing to himself that he would do whatever it took to win back her trust and her heart. The journey to repair their relationship would not be easy, but Jared knew that Isabella was worth every effort. As Isabella walked away from the courthouse, her mind was racing. The revelation that her mysterious husband of 3 years was none other than her boss, Mr. Right, left her feeling betrayed, confused, and hurt. How could the man she had grown to respect and even admire have doubted her so easily? It was clear to her that their marriage, built on a foundation of mystery and distance, was now teetering on the brink of collapse. Meanwhile, Jared was in turmoil. He had rushed to cancel the divorce, but it was too late. Isabella had already walked away, and the papers had been signed. His heart sank as he realized the enormity of his mistake. He had let his insecurities and the strange circumstances lead him to nearly destroy the best thing that had ever happened to him. But Jared was not one to give up easily. He knew he had to find a way to win back Isabella's trust and show her that he was the man she deserved. That evening, he decided to visit her apartment to try and explain everything. However, when he arrived, he saw Isabella leaving with a male friend. The sight triggered his jealousy and insecurity all over again, and he wrongly assumed that this man was the reason for Isabella's distant behavior. Jared's emotions were a whirlwind. He was desperate to make things right, but his own doubts and fears kept clouding his judgment. He couldn't bring himself to confront Isabella just yet, not when he wasn't sure if she would even want to hear him out. In the days that followed, Jared kept his distance from Isabella, though it pained him to do so. He threw himself into his work, trying to distract himself from the mess he had created. But no matter how hard he tried, his thoughts kept drifting back to Isabella. He had to make things right, and he knew that the first step was to be honest with her. One evening, Jared couldn't take it any longer. He called Isabella into his office, determined to lay all his cards on the table. As she stood before him, looking composed yet distant, Jared took a deep breath and began to speak. "Isabella, "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. "I'm not just your boss. I'm also the man you married 3 years ago. The one you've never seen. The one you've been waiting for." Isabella's eyes widened in shock, her heart pounding in her chest. She had suspected something was amiss, but this revelation was beyond anything she had imagined. Jared continued, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know this must be hard to believe, and I know I've made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I never meant to hurt you. I didn't recognize you, and when I thought you were involved with someone else, I let my fears get the better of me. But the truth is, I've been falling in love with you all over again, without even realizing you were the same person." Isabella felt a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, and a flicker of something she wasn't ready to name. She didn't know whether to feel relieved that the truth was finally out, or furious that it had taken him so long to be honest with her. But one thing was clear. Jared's words had struck a chord. "Jared, you've hurt me," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "You doubted me, and you filed for divorce without even talking to me first. How am I supposed to trust you again?" Jared nodded, his expression pained. "I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I'm asking for a chance to make it right. Please, Isabella, give me that chance." Isabella looked into his eyes, searching for the sincerity she desperately needed to see. And in that moment, she realized that despite everything, a part of her still cared for him. But she wasn't ready to forgive him just yet. "I need time," she said softly. Jared accepted her words with a nod, knowing that this was the best he could hope for at that moment. The days that followed were filled with tension and uncertainty. Jared was determined to prove to Isabella that he was serious about making amends. He started with small gestures, sending her flowers, leaving thoughtful notes on her desk, and even bringing her favorite coffee each morning. But he knew that actions spoke louder than words, and he was prepared to go the extra mile to show Isabella that he was worthy of her trust. Isabella, on the other hand, was struggling with her feelings. She appreciated Jared's efforts, but the pain of his betrayal still lingered. She had always been independent, relying on no one but herself. Letting Jared back into her life, after everything that had happened, felt like a risk she wasn't sure she was ready to take. One weekend, Jared took a bold step. He invited Isabella to spend a day with him, promising that it would be just a day to relax, no pressure, no talk of their complicated past. Hesitantly, Isabella agreed, curious to see what he had planned. Jared took her to a secluded estate just outside the city, a place he often retreated to when he needed to clear his mind. It was a beautiful, serene location, with rolling hills and a sparkling lake. As they walked along the shore, Jared spoke about his life, his fears, and the loneliness that had driven him to create his dual identity. He told her about the emptiness he felt despite his wealth and how meeting her had brought a new sense of purpose to his life. Isabella listened quietly, her heart softening as she saw a side of Jared she had never seen before. He wasn't just the powerful CEO or the mysterious Mr. Right. He was a man with vulnerabilities, just like her. For the first time, she began to see him as someone she could truly understand, and perhaps even forgive. As Jared and Isabella continued to spend time together, their relationship slowly began to heal. Isabella started to open up to Jared, sharing stories about her life, her dreams, and the challenges she had faced. She found herself laughing with him, enjoying his company in a way she hadn't expected. The walls she had built around her heart began to crumble, and she started to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could have a future together. But just as things seemed to be improving, a misunderstanding threatened to derail their progress. One evening, Jared was attending a business function when he overheard a conversation between two of his colleagues. They were discussing Isabella's male friend, the same man Jared had seen with her outside the courthouse. One of the colleagues joked that the man seemed to be more than just a friend. Jared's insecurities flared up once again. He had come so far in winning back Isabella's trust, but the thought that she might still have feelings for someone else drove him to the brink of despair. He left the event early, his mind racing with doubts. The next day, Jared confronted Isabella, his emotions getting the better of him. "Isabella, I need to know, what is your relationship with that man?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. Isabella was taken aback by the sudden question. "He's just a friend, Jared," she replied, confused by his tone. "Why are you asking me this?" Jared ran a hand through his hair, struggling to keep his emotions in check. "I've heard things, Isabella. I don't want to doubt you, but it's hard when I don't know where I stand." Isabella's heart sank. After everything they had been through, Jared still didn't trust her completely. "Jared, if we're going to make this work, you have to trust me," she said firmly. "I've been honest with you from the start. You can't let your insecurities ruin what we're trying to rebuild." Jared realized the truth in her words. He had let his fears cloud his judgment once again. "You're right," he admitted, his voice softening. "I'm sorry, Isabella. I know I need to do better." The confrontation, though difficult, proved to be a turning point for Jared and Isabella. Jared knew that if he was to have any chance of a future with Isabella, he needed to let go of his insecurities and trust her fully. He made a conscious effort to change, and Isabella, seeing his sincerity, began to open her heart to him once more. One evening, Jared invited Isabella to a private dinner at his estate. The setting was intimate and romantic, with soft music playing in the background and candles flickering on the table. As they sat down to eat, Jared took a deep breath and looked into Isabella's eyes. "Isabella, I know I've made mistakes, more than I can count, but I want you to know that I love you, and I'm committed to making this work. I don't want to live in fear of losing you. I want to build a life with you, the way we should have from the beginning." Isabella felt her heart swell with emotion. She had waited so long to hear those words, and now that they were finally spoken, she knew that Jared meant them. "Jared, I love you too," she said softly, "but we need to build this relationship on trust and respect. We need to be honest with each other, no matter what." Jared nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I promise, Isabella. From this moment on, I will be completely transparent with you. No more secrets, no more doubts. I want us to be partners in every sense of the word." With that, Jared reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it to reveal a stunning diamond ring, the same one he had tried to give her before, only this time it was presented with full understanding and love. "Isabella Brooks, will you give me another chance to be the husband you deserve? Will you marry me again? This time, with no blindfolds, no secrets, just us?" Tears welled up in Isabella's eyes as she looked at the man who had caused her so much confusion and heartache, yet had also shown her how deeply he could love. She knew that their journey together had been anything but ordinary, but she also knew that she had fallen in love with him, both as Mr. Right and as Jared Right. "Yes, Jared," she whispered, a smile breaking through her tears. "I will marry you again." Jared slipped the ring onto her finger, sealing their promise with a tender kiss. In that moment, all the doubts and fears that had plagued them seemed to melt away. They were no longer two strangers bound by a mysterious marriage. They were a couple, united by love, trust, and a commitment to facing the future together. As the night went on, they talked and laughed, sharing stories and dreams for the future. It was as if they were discovering each other all over again. Only this time, they were doing it as equals, with nothing to hide. Jared and Isabella's relationship had been tested in ways neither of them could have imagined, but they had emerged stronger, more united, and more in love than ever before. And as they danced under the stars that night, they knew that this was only the beginning of their story, a story that they would write together, chapter by chapter, for the rest of their lives. Hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. Your participation is essential so that we can continue to bring you more incredible stories. Share it with your friends to help our channel grow. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.